So first of all, welcome. It's Tuesday, December the 8th and 6 o'clock, and this is the Town of Mamaroneck Sustainability Collaborative. We'll probably have a few more people joining us along the way. I think we have at least one special guest this evening, two special guests this evening. So the first one is Nancy Seligson is here. She's our town supervisor.
Hey, everyone.
How are things at the marsh, Nancy? It looks good out there.
It was beautiful the day this photo was taken.
Yeah, exactly. And also, Sue Odierna asked me to introduce Amelia. Wave to everybody, Amelia. Could you tell everybody just a little bit about yourself and what you might be interested in?
Yes, of course. Thank you so much for that introduction. Hi, everybody. So I am a current senior at the high school. I am the president of the National Honor Society this year. And as I'm sure some of you know, that the National Honor Society is focused on service. And I personally am very for environmental justice. And so I've been reaching out to people, and someone told me that this is all happening and there's so many committees of people working so hard to get environmental justice in our district. So I thought I would join, and I'm here because as part of NHS, we have a lot of volunteers who are eager to help all of you in your initiatives. So if anybody needs any volunteers or any bodies to help and do anything, please let me know. And yeah, I'm really excited to hear everybody's initiatives and what's going on. Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, great. So Nancy, would you like to just say a few words of greeting?
Sure. Happy December, everyone. Sorry that we're still all in COVID crisis. Looks like things are going to get worse before they get better. Sustainability is more important than ever because of that, I think, and because of the ongoing nature of climate change. So everything we can do on the part of the town of Mamaroneck and our sister villages to help our community and our region is so vitally important. And you guys are, the devoted volunteers to do it. I'm hoping that we can create better communication and better coordination with the town government in the coming year and really help align with interests of the town board as well, so that we can make sure that our initiatives and sustainability are successful. And I'm hoping that we can really figure out how to measure our carbon footprint and also come up with a real target for the town of Mamaroneck for energy reduction in the future. I think those are two really important aspects. But of course, I would like to support all of your endeavors. And one of the ways I can do that is to try and help us align better with the town board so that they're familiar with and understand the priorities and objectives that everyone's interested in.
Okay, great, thank you. Let's see, why don't we?
Thank you.
Good, thank you. So why don't we, it's hard to figure out how to go around. I'm still failing at this. But Michelle, why don't we start with you, and I'll just ask everybody to quickly introduce themselves and your key interests. This might help Amelia and a couple of the other new folk.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Lewis, and I've been involved with the collaborative, I guess, for almost 10 years, or since the beginning. And I'm interested in several projects, but mostly with clean water, clean air. We've worked with green barrels and healthy yards, and I'm now working with the seniors at the high school developing an app. And I think we're looking to just put together some overarching goals for the collaborative with a small team of us and beginning a new committee. So I live in Larchmont.
Okay, I'm Mitch Green. somehow appointed chair of the Sustainability Collaborative. My key role is to just keep the train moving on time in the general direction of the station. So we've heard from Nancy, we've heard from Amelia. Mark Carell.
Hi, everybody. Mark Carell. I live in Mamaroneck. My interest is in energy efficiency and in greenhouse gas emissions, reducing it, not increasing it.
Good. Karen Core.
Hi, everybody. I'm a resident of Larchmont, but I've been part of the town of Mamaroneck Sustainability Collaborative for about 3 years, slightly over 3 years, and my focus has been in food scrap recycling and also with Love Your Food, which is an outcome of the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation grant that we were awarded, our 3 municipalities were awarded in partnership with Mamaroneck School District, which was launched last fall. And it's a 3-year grant that focuses on inspiring residents to reduce wasted food, to reduce the amount of food we waste, share the excess, and compost the rest.
Great. Arlene?
Oh. Yeah, hi, I'm Arlene Novich. I live in the town, and I've been working with Karen on the food waste recycling, Healthy Yards, and our newly established tree committee. And so those are my my interests.
Great. Kevin Crowe.
Hi, I'm on the board of the Larchmont Garden Civic Association, and would like to work with Arlene and Mark Kramer on the new tree committee. I'm just learning about what their ambitious goals are, but that's what I'd like to do.
Okay. Mark Kramer.
Mark Kramer, it's great to see all of these nice smiling faces at night with nice sunny places where you'd like to go, like a beach or someone's kitchen or whatever. Anyway, I work with Karen and Arlene on trees and food waste, and currently I'm also reaching out to the Okra students with their project to pick up food scraps in the village of Larchmont using an energy, renewable energy source of a quadricycle. So that's sort of the things that I'm with. I also have been roped into this great committee by Mark Carell. So although he's muted, I'll give him credit for all the headaches I've caused.
Great. Okay, Libby.
Hi. So my interests are, and I'm working with the people who have already spoken on Healthy Yards and the trees and food waste. And I wanted to say to this group that I just will now be on the native plants subcommittee for Planting Westchester, which I think is a wonderful opportunity for us to have synergy with the other communities in Westchester, and that's going to just start up in January.
Great.
I live in
Nick,
Larchmont.
Good. Nick Zuba.
Hello and good evening, everyone. So yes, my name is Nick Zuba. My interest area and area of expertise is trying to reduce energy consumption in our built environment through energy efficiency and renewable energy efforts. And certainly I'm taking a keen interest for this upcoming year to be working on the town of Mamaroneck's Net Zero 2050 plan and how we can get that deployed. And then also interest also in the community solar at the next phase of getting that deployed as well, working with Frank and Mark on those efforts. And I reside in the village of Mamaroneck.
Great. George.
Well, I'm in the town of Mamaroneck. I'm with the Larchmont Garden Civic Association. I've spent probably a decade trying to reduce noise from gas blowers, and I've been taught since then that one of the major problems with gas blowers is what they do to the air, to the environment of the air, and I think that's an important thing to look at. The I brought the original idea of the repair cafe to the sustainability committee. We were ready to go and it got canceled the day before we were going to go. I'm certainly looking forward to doing it, to trying to rework it. But it looks to me like it's going to be some time before we can do that. But I think we may be able to do some work in keeping people interested and keeping them excited about the prospect. I noticed there's a lot of interest in trees. Well, my special interest in trees is on the Boston Post Road because I've always been frustrated by the way that the town's part of the road looks. I think there's a lot of opportunity to improve the way it looks. And I think trees could be an important part of that. That's what I got. I noticed on the material that we received, okra. I don't know what okra is. Will somebody tell me what?
We'll
It
get to
is.
that a little bit later, George.
Well, let's just say it's original research for civics action for the
Correct.
school.
But one thing I'd like to note also, what we're really working on is what the subcommittees can be working on in their plans. And I think the work that Mitch has done to put all this together and to create subcommittees is just absolutely terrific.
Okay, Mark Manley.
It's on mute. Hi, everyone. Mark Manley. I live in the village of Larchmont and I've been part of the collab for quite some time. I'm not one of the original ones, but close. My interests are solar and renewables, to some extent energy efficiency, recycling much more now, and then sort of on the side, trees, of course, and the net zero work as well. So glad to be part of the call.
Great, thank you. Frank Owens.
Yes, hi. I'm a Village of Larchmont resident, and my interests are pretty much everything the collab is doing, but in particular energy. And I'm looking forward to hopefully finishing up the community solar project on the ice rink, which we're hopefully going to do with Hummock students and maybe high school students as well. And hopefully trying to get the school district to think about maybe putting in some school buildings. And then also particular interest of mine is this resiliency issue and helping figuring out some alternatives for people who don't have on-site power to do something that would be inexpensive and not as noisy and polluting as the alternatives right now.
Okay, great. June. We can't hear you, June.
Can you hear me now?
Now it's good.
Yes.
Not now.
Try one more time.
Oh, there you
Now
go.
we hear.
Okay. So my name's June. I live in the town of Mamaroneck. I co-lead the Healthy Yards initiative with Arlene and help out with the food waste recycling and composting, supporting all the work that Karen is doing with the others. And I'm interested in just about everything the collaborative is doing. And I'll note, since you raised it, Elizabeth, I too have recently been drafted to work on the Planting Westchester team. And I am working on container gardens.
Great. Juliet.
Hi, I'm Juliet. I'm a student in Okra, and I've been interested in the environment for a very long time, and I'd love to do my part and help around, and I'm just like to help.
Great. Terrific. Joe Liberti.
Good evening. I'm a teacher at Mamaroneck High School, also the founder of Original Civic Research in Action, and I'm here tonight just to listen and take notes.
Good. Karen Weisberg.
Hi, everybody. I am the bicycle advocate. I am very happy that we have the sharrows installed on 5 different roads. And I'm looking forward to the Boston Post Road project, Complete Street project. And yeah, that's my interest.
Good. Liv Sheehan.
Hi, my name is Svea Leaf. I'm also a member of.
Oh, Svea, I'm
Okra.
sorry.
It's okay. I'm also a member of Okra, and I'm a sophomore at Mamaroneck High School. I want to do my best to help with the environment in Larchmont, Mamaroneck, and do my part as well.
All right, good. Let's see. We didn't hear from Oliver.
Hi, I'm Oliver. I'm also a sophomore at MHS, and I just really want to help the environment for Larchmont and Mamaroneck too, and do my part.
Great, excellent. Let's see. Sue Odierna. I see you, Sue. We all see you. Sue's been having some connection problems. In the meantime, Kristen?
She's muted out.
Okay. Kristen hopefully can hear herself. There you are.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Kristen Anderson. I'm here representing the Larchmont Environmental Committee, as always. We have many interests. I guess one of the most prominent ones recently has been our new gas-powered leaf blower complete ban that was passed recently. And future interest is I'm looking into putting together a confederation of environmental committees in Westchester, focusing particularly on environmental committees along the so I'm hoping the Town of Mamaroneck Collaborative will be part of that.
Okay, great. Let's see. Dylan, I think you just joined.
Hi, how are you?
I think you're muted, Dylan.
Am I? Can you hear me now?
Now we can. Yes, good.
Sorry, my connection's kind of bad on this side.
Okay. And then Sue Odierna, who is our sustainability coordinator for the town and the person who keeps us all going on a day-to-day basis, is here. And then the last person, Libby, I don't think excuse me, Lisa, I didn't get to you.
Hi all. So I'm Lisa McDonald with Kristen Anderson. I'm the co-chair for the Larchmont Environmental Committee. And in January, I'll be attending with Sasha Nar. Kristen's going to be working on projects like the ones she mentioned, and Sasha will be joining me as co-chair. So the two of us will be here in January to say a formal hello. And yeah, you know, I started, my interest was in food scrap recycling in the schools and houses of worship, and it continues to be working with the Okra students on their pilot project, which will be wonderful this spring. We're really excited about that. But I've been very involved with the leaf blower ban, and we're certainly happy and proud of that, and looking forward to implementation of that and you know, outreach and education and along with healthy yards in that regard.
Okay, great. Thank you. So thanks, everybody. We have a packed agenda as we always do. Tonight's is a little bit different than our normal organization. But before we get to that, the next thing we have to do is find out about the minutes. And has anybody read our minutes from last month, which was November? George, I can always count on you. Anybody, any comments on the minutes?
Yes, so I read the minutes and I recommend that they be accepted as is.
Okay, any discussion about that? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, it looks like the minutes have passed. Thanks, everyone. So this evening, we're doing something a little bit different. A while back, Nancy Seligson and I were talking about the collaborative, and it's clear to everyone here and everyone listening and what the collaborative has done over the last 7 to 8 years that we're very active. We're active in a whole bunch of different things, and we're very responsive to new ideas that get taken up at any particular time. And this year, actually, we've also proven then that when called upon, we can actually do something fairly quickly. But looking forward to echo what Nancy was saying earlier, there's a desire to bring what we're doing at the collaborative into a better understanding with the town board and vice versa, and try to get some better understanding at the town board of all the things that we're interested in, all the things we're trying to accomplish. And as part of that, we came up with the idea of actually having yearly goals, of defining what the projects are that we were trying to work on, defining what the big picture for those projects might be, and then defining what the yearly goals for those projects might be, and then perhaps even getting down to the specifics of what on any particular project we might be trying to accomplish every quarter. And to the extent that we can formalize those here at the collaborative, and then we can approve them hopefully in January after a few rounds of review, we'll be able to share those with the town board, and they'll hopefully have a better idea of what our priorities have been, where we think we're going, what our work plan is for the year. And this will also give us a really good opportunity to listen to the board and to see what particular interests they have among the priorities that we've seen, but really quite possible that they'll come up with something that none of us have thought of. And I think, as Nancy was saying earlier, the notion is, to the extent that we can be seen by the town board as a resource, an organization that without the obligation to pay 23 or 24 more paychecks, the town board can benefit from our energy and enthusiasm to advance their goals. That might be a good thing as well. So that's part of the genesis of the notion of the work plans. We sent them around, actually of the 12 we sent out, I think Sue sent them around earlier this morning. We actually got 9 responses, so 75%, which I think for the first time trying this at all, that's really pretty terrific. So thanks to all of you who have contributed. And what we're going to do is just really quickly go through the draft work plans that were sent around this morning and the midday. Listen to any initial comments, and then in the next few weeks, I'll be working with each of the team leaders for the various programs to try to refine them, put together final drafts. Those will come back to the collaborative in our January meeting, which I believe is going to be on January the 12th. And we'll review and approve the work plans at that time as our way of moving forward for the year. And then later in January, I'll be attending, probably virtually it looks like, a town board work session and sharing our plans with the board and trying to gain their feedback and impressions and get a sense of their priorities. So that's kind of the big picture. So what I'd like to do is, as we come up to each of the work plans in order, like the team leader to lead the discussion. So the first one up is Mamaroneck Net Zero 2050. And Frank Owens, I think this one is for you to help us go through. Frank, unmute yourself, please.
Sorry about that, everybody.
Great.
So as I was saying, I'd be happy to give you my thoughts because I think I did provide some thoughts on this. I will have to say at the outset that there are 3 initiatives that I have my name associated with, and I think this of the 3, I'm looking for somebody else to hopefully be more actively involved than I will be. I'm happy to give some input. And I know Nick Zuba very kindly said that he might be willing to jump in on this, and so I think Mark Carell and et cetera. But just in terms of my thoughts, I think the idea is, Nancy had mentioned that she thought it would be a good idea to try to think about, big picture, if I'm understanding her comments correctly, and to the extent that we could come up with, think about what the town of Mamaroneck is doing in terms of long-term carbon reduction and climate goals, and how they might correspond to what the state has put out. I guess my only 2 cents on that is, as always, I really like to try to think about those things in terms of, how is that immediately impacting the people in our town? And so I guess my thought would be, and the way I had revised the goal a little bit to make it be, kind of think about our children, because I think that's really what we're talking about. It's the next generation. How do we make our town a better place? And I think we all want to contribute in a way to the larger goal of, but I think it's always good to be grounded in what we do. And so anyhow, that's, and I guess the other thought I have is that while the state has some goals, I think it's also important to kind of go through the math, and it may turn out that what we want to try to accomplish is different from what the state is trying to do. And it may be more aggressive than what in terms of greenhouse gas reduction, or could be less, but I think we need to kind of, it has to be grounded in our community. So anyhow, those are my thoughts, and happy to get others.
Okay, great. Nick, any initial reactions?
Well, my initial reaction on that is, I don't know if I have the bandwidth to chair this. I don't think that that's going to be necessarily true. I can certainly just, simply provide what feedback and input that I could have, in being useful to this particular initiative. The only thing I probably will comment on the plan is that to say that we probably would have a complete greenhouse gas emissions inventory completed by Q1 sounds awfully ambitious to me. I kind of remember a fact from my time with the town of Babylon, where I worked for a number of years in this case, and we did a greenhouse gas inventory back in 2007. And that took probably a better part of a year, just the study itself, to actually get done. And we were looking at various different sectors at the time as well. So just to give you that grounding of, context in this case, this might be a little bit smaller, territory that maybe we had to do than, the town of Babylon, which was a little bit more of a, certainly a more densely populated area, and certainly denser probably sectors in this case to look at. But I still think, just my honest opinion in this case, and from past experience, I think a Q1 completion of that's going to be a little bit ambitious, and we might have to extend that timeline.
We have.
Mark, I'm sorry. Mark Carell, you've had some experience helping the town with at least the government side on our GHGs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we have a spreadsheet all set up with the proper factors. All I need is the energy data. Michelle, you were starting to say something?
I was going to say that you've worked on this for the town already. And it seems that we're fairly far along, right?
Yeah, well, the town brought in, I guess, an outsider in their software, and there were some issues and limitations. Nancy, I think, and Sue certainly know more than I do about it. I know there was some dissatisfaction, so I'm not quite sure from a strategic point of view where the town wants to go. But certainly,
well, can I just jump in on that, Mark, for a second?
Yeah.
So I think to look at this question about, the town and their greenhouse gas emissions, you have to think about not only, there's the built environment, and then there's also transportation, which is a big big contributor to greenhouse gases. And so but within just the built environment, what I think the firm that was tracking the greenhouse gases at the town, actually tracking energy and then as an extension greenhouse gases, they were just looking at the town facilities. And so but I think, the way to look at this ideally as a town is to try to think about all the different types of buildings in the town and getting even just an estimate of what the greenhouse gases might be, and then also transportation. And I think my thought on this is that there are lots of other communities across the country, and I guess I was hoping that we might be able to come up with find some other communities that have done this type of thing. I have reached out to NYSERDA to see whether they have any models, and they didn't have any, at least the person I spoke to. But my hope would be that we could find some other communities that have already done this type of thing, and we could learn from them.
So I did a little bit of research on that, Frank, and I spoke to the Living Building Challenge, which is out of California. They have a program that's called Living Communities, and it's more of I want to say it's more of a holistic look at how you can improve your communities for better quality of life, as well as going to net zero. There's a very large program on net zero. And I think it's a good framework to look at further, and how we can, without the numbers even being quite as specific, where we get an overall sense of where we are and then how to make the community better, right? So I think at the end of the day, we want it to be more independent. We want to reduce our carbon. We want to, there are many factors, and how we can bring in the community to make the changes that have to be made in order to improve the community. I think that's been an ongoing challenge, and I think the numbers will tell us something, but to get to even 70% of our energy by 2030 it's a huge goal. And do we have buy-in, and how can we find out what kind of buy-in we have? Or Nancy, I think you did a survey before the collaborative even began about how people want to function in the community and what they're willing to do. I think that Karen and, each of the committees has seen buy-in, but not to the extent that we are anywhere near 20% of our community. So I think as one of the goals for reaching out to 2050, even 2030, is to think about how to bring in all of our residents and our businesses and our schools. So the Living Building Challenge certainly is a source for us. They have done, say, 12 communities cross country. I also listened to a webinar from the Earth Institute this morning, which is also focused on educating communities and educating people and bringing them in. There was a group that was from India, and it was about how citizen-driven climate change, right? They had things that were as simple as having each student that goes to school plant a tree when they start school. Trees given to them, they learn how to take care of the tree. They watch the tree. They have 1,000 students. Each year they add another 1,000 trees, right? They say, we could do this with 3,000, 3 trees or 5 trees. Each year we would add 5,000 trees to our community, as well as building the stewards to look after those trees, to learn how to care for them, and bring the community up like that. So, it's just, they had other other thoughts as well, but I think we're going to really have to reach out to some of these other organizations that have projects on the ground.
Great. Okay.
Could I just
Nancy,
comment,
please, Nancy.
Mitch? You know, everything Michelle says is true, but right now we really need measurements. I remember Mark Carell saying, you can't change things, can't measure. You can't make reductions without it. So we've done a lot of things over the past 10 years to reduce our energy wise. For the past several years, it was not entirely satisfactory, but we have a bunch of data up until the end of 2019. And it would just be helpful to have some effort to really look at what else we need. We got to have some numbers because we have to be able to report to the community to get the buy-in of what we've done and what we've accomplished.
That's exactly correct. Yeah, because I was going to say, then a holistic study of this, Nancy, is what we really had to do. You got to look at all the sectors, determine really where all the problems are in those particular sectors, because then you can go to the community and make the justification to them and get their buy-in to say, we want to commit town resources or go out to get other resources from the state or the federal government even to say, we want to bring those resources to bear to go and make those sectors more efficient. And doing what we have to do in this case to get basically even more community involvement as well, if we maybe want to even help them out as well within the residential community itself, about how we can basically go ahead and make the community more sustainable and certainly getting to that net zero objective. So yeah, I mean, that's the only way you're going to do it. You got to get that comprehensive look, and then you determine where you put the resources to, where you can get that biggest bang for your buck already.
All right, great. That's a great start. I think what I'll probably be doing is organizing a conference call with a number of the people that were just speaking, so we can try to figure out how to move some of this forward and take the next step on the work plan. So,
Mitch,
yes.
Mitch, can I just say one thing that ties into net zero, which is that what's super important to remember related back to 5G is that 5G uses 4 times the amount of electricity as 4G and hugely increases our carbon footprint. And so that if people bring that into the community, they're increasing the carbon footprint, and that really we want to move that out. And so that's something to be aware of, that if people are talking about reducing by bringing 5G, they're going to be back to the same starting point.
Okay, that's very interesting. We'll have to follow up on that, Eliza.
Okay.
So in designing the agenda, what we tried to do is kind of move the subject matter around so that we don't get stuck in energy for an hour and then go on to something else. So now for something semi-completely different, trees for our town. And Arlene, please take it away.
Okay, so for trees, our big push is really to increase the awareness of the community about the value of trees. If they really see what the value is, there may be a little bit more respect for them. And we're hoping to increase the tree cover with a goal of reaching 40%. And we want to do this by increasing the planting between us and have resident events, but also, which is not on here really, but has come to my attention from some of the members of this committee in different forms. We need to also find a way to increase some of the oversight on what's coming down, which trees are coming down. I mean, I just got an email from Luke, who can't be here because he teaches on Tuesday nights, that over at the brook, they chopped down a whole slew of trees and they used the equipment. A lot of the equipment went right down the banks towards the water, and he did all of the, I mean, I walked there a lot. He did all of these native plantings and did a lot of work there. And we really need to find some way for a little bit more oversight for some of this. I know Mark can contribute to this too, because in his area, a lot of trees came down, developers took down trees that really probably did not need to come down. And we don't really, there's not a lot of transparency for us. You know, we don't really know exactly what's happening, why it's happening, you know, how many permits are given out, and the reasons for it, or what happens afterwards. You know, how many permit applications were actually granted, and the ones that were not, why, for taking down trees. So, you know, these are some of the issues. I am not well versed in a lot of this, so I kind of defer to some of the other people with this, but these are some big issues that there doesn't seem to be a lot of oversight. And if there is, then I think we need to see some of this. And, you know, that's one of the, you know, one of the issues that we're looking at. The other thing, as far as the tree survey, we were talking about that, and we were thinking that we might do our own scaled down version of a tree survey in order to see exactly what we have now in town. But I was put in touch with, I think he's one of the senior urban foresters from the DEC, Millie McGraw, put me in touch with him, and lovely guy, eager to help. He's available. He will speak at a collab meeting. He will speak at a meeting. You know, so he was really just very helpful in terms of that. And I was asking him about doing a tree survey, and he didn't think it was a great idea. He thought that we would be putting in a lot of effort for something that we're not really, you know, just counting the trees is really not going to be as valuable. Usually the tree surveys are going to be for the health of the tree. Which trees, what kinds of trees, and are these trees healthy? That's usually where you get the most information. So he just thought that our efforts could be better used maybe in contributing to more trees. We could look for areas where they're tree deficient. Maybe there are some areas around the town, whether it's in certain areas or across the board, to look and see where there are tree deficient areas. That might be the best, the use of our resources. And then I know that, Mitch, I have to ask you, because I don't really understand a lot of what you wrote on this, what you meant, because, and I don't think anybody else has this, but one of the things for process was assess the current tree coverage in all parts of the town. So 100% private areas, I'm not sure what you mean by 100% private areas, public areas, and the private public. You want a complete tree survey, is that?
So, well, let me just jump in and explain.
Yeah, help.
Thank you for the question. So, the tree committee, Trees for Our Town can take a lot of different directions. But I think one of the things we all have to remember is that there are at least 3 types of locations within the total geography of the town where a tree might exist today or could exist tomorrow. One of them is 100% private property. So most of the folks here are residents somewhere in the town, and maybe you own the property or help own the property. Maybe you're living in an apartment, and then whoever owns the apartment owns that property. And so it's totally private. But the same thing goes for the commercial establishments. It's private. That 100% private property is just as true of Stop and Shop as it is for Michelle's backyard or mine. The next area is 100% public. And these are things like our street rights of way, from private property edge on one side, across the sidewalks, the street area, the driving areas, back to the sidewalks, that zone. But it also includes things like town facilities, or it includes the schools and some other areas like that. May actually even include some of our waterfront areas. And then the third area is that sort of private-public intersection. And as I understand it, that's that, on a typical residential street, it's the first 10 feet of, say, my property or Michelle's or yours, Arlene's, that is adjacent to the sidewalk or the roadway, that the town has some ability to help manage trees in those areas. And so those are the rules for what to do in each of those areas are actually a little bit different. On private property, we can go straight to the people who own the property. In the public, totally public realm, depends on which public organization it is. And in this intermediary space, well, that's really a collaboration that needs to happen between the town, collaborative, and then the property. So that's the idea.
So to assess the current coverage, though, did you have any suggestions about that, or not necessarily?
I think one of the things we need to do is figure out what we mean. It's a little I think that's an important factor, assignment for the tree committee, to understand what other people mean by 40% coverage. Does that mean if we look down from space and we have Google Earth and we can, in the summer, and we can get an idea of where trees might be covering the ground, and somebody could actually theoretically draw lines around all of that and get the area? Is that going to be 40% of the total land area of the town, or is it going to be something else? Or how do other people define that? Because I think, as Frank was, or Mark Carell was saying earlier, and we need to have some sense of what our data starting point is before we can decide what our goal wants to be.
Right.
Quite possibly, Arlene, in a number of our neighborhoods, it's easily possible that we're over 40% in the non-building occupied areas of the lots. So that's part of the question.
Yes, for some, yes. So, but we're talking about the totality of the town, and we have several of us are going to a webinar tomorrow, actually. So hopefully some of this will be kind of explained a little bit more detail.
Great.
How to
And
do.
Arlene, I know that Sue has a bunch of data and information for you from Liz Aitchison from the town.
Right, okay.
I know that it seems like trees are taken down willy-nilly, but please know that the town does not have any laws or regulations that pertain to properties that are smaller than half an acre.
Right, right.
Or less, you can take down a tree on private property as you see fit and as you wish. On properties bigger than a half acre, you do have to get a tree permit. And in construction situations, if a tree is going to be within the footprint of the proposed development, it is usually allowed to be taken down.
Right.
There's a lot of information and data there. And we want to be, I think that it would be great to be able to look at the town and say, we need more trees in certain areas and figure out how to do that. But I also think this is a perfect example of trying to align with the board as well and get their input and let them know that this is an interest of the Sustainability Collaborative.
Right. And I know a lot of this is spelled out in the, in the tree code. That's in the tree code. So that was one of our questions was, do we need to make any changes to the tree code? And I mean, from my own personal view, I certainly don't think it needs to be totally revamped. I'm just wondering if there are any pieces of that where we need to add to it or not so much change it, but add to it. I think that's, after speaking to Luke, he's had a lot of input with this. maybe in terms of oversight or something like that. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. And also the idea of working with having a dedicated tree committee. Do we need it? Do we want it? We still don't really know. Is it helpful? I mean, I got feedback from Steve that there was one. And I asked him, he said it was helpful, but then it sort of disbanded, and I think there was some overlap. So I don't really know exactly.
Actually, I think they died.
It died. Yeah, it's very difficult. So before, yeah.
So there needs to be a lot of thinking about how to organize this and how to make it effective, but also to connect it to the town board. And, the comprehensive plan is supposed to get started again, I hope in the beginning of the year, and with looking for public input in the spring. And I think that, trees is one of those things that really would be nice to hear from the community, how they think about trees and what kind of vision there could be regarding trees. So, I'd really like to connect it with that as well. So I feel like, let's talk about structuring that and communicating that.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
We're hoping to get, residents to want to plant trees on their own private property. Many have them taken down. And also, if there is a way that if you are taking down any trees on your property, one reason or another, or if a tree came down in a storm, can we really push residents to have a tree planted, maybe not in your yard, maybe someplace else?
Right, to replace it.
Yeah, you don't replace it there. Maybe there's another location. And I'm sure that Liz is well aware of a lot of that too. Because I had worked with her about, tree siting, where is an appropriate place if you want to have a tree planted. But would you know, Nancy, about I know that there was a tree survey done before your time.
Yeah, so we have, Sue has the information for you. So let's
okay, wonderful.
Let's, regroup with that information and look at what an effective next step would be.
Okay, great. Thank you. We're going to move along. Karen, or I guess because Beth Radow, who is one of our original members, probably has a conflict this evening. I think Alana couldn't join us. So Karen, can you take us through Love Your Food?
Yes, sure. So Love Your Food, yes. So Love Your Food, I mentioned earlier, is a result of this Department of Environmental Conservation grant that was awarded. It's a 3-year grant, and basically it's a comprehensive approach with that includes our pre-existing food scrap recycling efforts. And basically, what our objectives for this year, for the next year, are really to try to meet the deliverables in this grant, this proposal that had already been approved, and for which we have milestones and deliverables that are expected from us in the next few years. But obviously, due to COVID, we had to make some amendments, and which have been approved and by DEC. But we are sort of waiting for the paperwork to be finalized for that before we can actually begin to sort of act on the proposed changes. And basically the main change is just changing what was a field trip that couldn't take place in the spring for 5th graders to the Greenberg Nature Center to learn about the connection between food scrap recycling and climate change. That's going to be converted into a series of videos that will be created by the Greenberg Nature Center in a partnership with the teachers in the school. So that once we get the final go ahead, that will be started, the video series, as well as Sorry, is that me?
Yeah, maybe you were a little close.
Okay, sorry. The other main deliverable that has we are changing due to COVID is the creation of an instructional video on the why and how of food scrap recycling for the school community, for our students and their families. And that, Beth is taking the lead on that, working with a few families to do that, hopefully starting next year, and to get that out. But what we're still working on quarterly updates of our website, Love Your Food website, which is, so that remains very dynamic and active, and we recently updated it. The quarterly updates, we recently updated it mid-November to include, brief stories on what's going on in our community under the Food for Thought section in the homepage. And I hope you all will take a look at it. And let us know if you have any stories related to, reducing wasted food, sharing the excess, or composting, food scrap recycling. If you could let us know. Every quarter we update we are looking for stories from the community of what people are doing. And the next the next deadline would be in mid-January. So if you can let me know of any stories that you would like to post. Meanwhile, Beth Radau has actually asked me to invite you all to share, she's been thinking about ways in which we can use our Love Your Food platform in order to encourage sharing of recipes, sharing of, the share portion we think is a very important part during the time that we're living in now, since we aren't able to sort of be together in person. We think that we need to find creative ways of sharing. And if you all have if anybody has any ideas on how we can do that using the Love Your Food platform, whether it's in terms of recipes, sharing to those in need, other ways, please do let us know. Okay, so we're looking forward to your feedback on that.
Okay, great. Mark, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, I have a question, general question, Karen, and maybe Sue. Are we keeping track of the number of visitors to any of these websites?
So,
are you referring to the Love Your Food?
Love Your Food, Healthy Yards, etc.
I am able through the website and through Facebook to look at the metrics. So it's just, it's just a click. So yes, I can do that. The Love Your Food Facebook page is managed by Veronica. I don't remember her last name, but right.
Would it be worthwhile at the end of the year to give us a summation of whatever number of visits? Are we being successful?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, and good point. And Mark, just to let you know, the communications consultants were very interested in that. So I think, you really hit on a very important point, because we want, the whole idea of this Love Your Food is we want this to be a whole community. This is a groundswell. We want this to be part of our culture, right? That everybody understands we are working as a community to reduce wasted food. We want to share the surplus. We want to compost the rest. And we want this to go out to the community. So it's important to know who is reading this. And when we send out the updates, are we reaching people? And if we're not, then how can we improve that? So that's very important to get the metrics.
Okay, great. Thank you. We're going to switch things up a little. George Roniger, we're going to bring you up slightly in the agenda. George has been thinking about the Repair Cafe. Just share us a little bit of what you're thinking about timing and things to do in the meantime.
Can you hear me? Because I'm having trouble with.
Hey, George, you're on twice. You've logged in twice.
What was that suggestion?
Oh, much better now.
Yeah, you can see me, but I can't.
No, you can see.
Go ahead, George.
Okay, you can hear me? Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, well, actually, we haven't been doing anything with the Repair Cafe because we've had no idea when we can get going, but recently, over the last several days, hearing about what the vaccine situation is, I've been getting very excited, and I've thought what we want to do is stay in touch with the people, all the people who volunteered the last time round. Let them know that we're still around, that we're going to have a Repair Cafe in the town of Mamaroneck as soon as we possibly can, and send around materials from time to time as I get materials. I've opened up on Facebook, I've opened up a group that's under Mamaroneck Repair Cafe, and I'll be leaving material in that group, and it would be useful if people checked in from time to time and let us know that they're checking in. I think we ought to do the same thing on the other major site, the door.
Next door.
Yeah, next door. Thank you. And we ought to be figuring out other ways of promoting what we're going to do eventually. And I'd welcome ideas and people to help us do that.
Mitch, we can't hear you.
Okay, back to resilient emergency backup power. Frank?
Yeah, so this idea it's grounded in the problem that I've had, and I think lots of people in the town of Mamaroneck in the villages have, which is when the power goes out, either you don't have power, well, if you don't have power, it's very frustrating, especially when you're working from home these days, which most of us are. And the other problem is that if you happen to be in a home or in a neighborhood where there are some existing generators, you can be frustrated both by the fact you don't have power to do your work or you just be home, but you're also disturbed by noisy and loud generators. So the idea here is to come up with trying to look at a range of solutions, kind of going from thinking as broadly as sort of the ideal solution, at least in my mind, is if everybody could have solar and the solar would power batteries and you'd have a quiet and very sustainable solution. That's just not a reality in terms of trees on people's houses, and it's also the economics, at least for batteries, is very expensive. So I think the idea would be to sort of look at that, and because that could work for certain people, but then also look at the other end of the spectrum, which is what's the least expensive way to provide sort of essential backup power, and is it and who currently are the providers for that? Are there contractors who are installing generators, if they're propane generators? And so the idea then is to just have a number of alternatives that we could provide local residents, and and that, people could choose based upon, what they want to do in their economics. I think part of this what might be that if you have a neighbor that has, or for people who want to install generators, I think you'd also make people aware that there's a way to sound attenuate them. And I don't know exactly what that solution is now, but I think that maybe not everybody, but I think a lot of people, if they were putting in a generator and they knew that there was a box they could put around it that would reduce the decibel levels from, pick a number, 80 to 40, something that makes it a little bit more pleasant for the neighbors. I think people knew that that was an option and it wasn't too expensive. I think a lot of people would do it. So that's the idea, is to try to figure out some, provide residents with solutions to provide backup power, so they can live and work in their homes, and also, but do it in a way that's, hopefully quiet and affordable. So anyhow, that's the idea.
Frank, I think you've touched on a subject that overlaps with trees. It's called follow-up by the town. Generators are permitted. People are supposed to put in vegetation. The vegetation may be put in year one. A drought hits, the vegetation dies, and year two, there's no vegetation. So there's absolutely no sound barrier. So again, the question for the town and our committees is the follow-up of what was originally permitted. And yes, Isaiah created a lot more temporary generators running for a week, which created a lot more noise per square, whatever you want to measure it. And they had no sound barriers at all, nor is there a suggested location for these portable generators. They can sit anywhere. Just some thoughts.
Okay.
Do we have restrictions or requirements, Nancy, in the town code for these generators?
You're on mute, Nancy.
I don't believe there are for the portable ones. There are for the permanent ones. I don't know what they are exactly, but we heard from a lot of people during the most recent blackout that those without generators, we heard from, complaining bitterly about the excessive noise, and it really was awful. And several people asked us to consider regulations regarding generators, but it seemed kind of extreme to the town board members to legislate an emergency situation, which by definition doesn't last, usually more than a week. But I think we certainly, Frank, we've looked into microgrids, and we certainly understand the need for trying to create resilient and sustainable power during these outages. And I think, investigating it further would be great. And dealing with the generator issues would be great too.
Good. Go ahead.
Well, actually, one of the things that I was talking to Mark Manley a little bit about this today, and he pointed out that it's interesting, the town has or I should say, the Westchester County has a prohibition against gas generators right now. So, it's an interesting time in my mind, because I think while we all want to be kind of as sustainable as possible, the economic realities is that it seems like that's the, you got to go with something that's a carbon-based solution. But hopefully there's some creative solutions out there.
One of the other things that creates noise from these generators is every week they have to cycle on. Mm-hmm. Now, if all your neighbors, I don't know which is best, to have a 15-minute period where everyone puts them on all together, Or what happens now is basically everyone's up to their own and they come on at 7 a.m. or they come on at 5 p.m. I'll ask Nancy, are there any time suggestions, codes as to when they're supposed to go? I didn't think so.
Yeah.
So one of the things we might consider is, would it make sense by neighborhood consensus of residents or in the town to suggest days and times? Obviously, Saturday and Sunday morning is not the time, even in good times, to have the generator go on at 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
We were
I have
talking
to say,
about,
Mark, that's not, we have not heard any complaints about the generators needing, when they need to, sort of practice generating.
What we've done here in Murdoch Woods is it's a neighbor to neighbor because it's a noise. So we just ask our neighbors, please reschedule it. And what happens is after a storm like Isaiah, all the time clocks have got to be changed, or else they're going on and off because Con Ed's constantly interrupting the power. So it's a neighbor to neighbor, but it would be helpful for the town to suggest something.
So it's an interesting topic you raise, Frank and Mark. I think one of the things that we've seen that the collaborative accomplished this year was looking at the wireless code. And we came upon it not exactly accidentally, but clearly there was an opportunity to take another look at the code to try to figure out how we could improve it. And Frank, perhaps at the same time that we're thinking about finding new options. Wow, that's exciting. For the generators and resilient emergency backup power, we also can take a look at what we can, what the collaborative might think would be improvements to the current generator regulations and things related to noise.
Yep.
So that would be a good thing to include. Okay, moving on, if I can only figure out where. The next on our subject is healthy yards. So I think this is June and Arlene. June, do you want to take the lead?
Sure. So we really did gain some good momentum from the kickoff of Healthy Yards last year. And of course, a lot of our planned work was postponed this year due to COVID. But we expect to pick up a lot of momentum next year. And so we have, I have to switch gears, but we have a number of, I'm sorry, I updated my operating system today, and it hasn't all come back around. So our program objective is to get back into the saddle next year and do lots of promotion of events and issues to increase the number of residents who take the Healthy Yards pledge. And so we've already started working on our Q1, our first quarter activity, thanks to Arlene, who really scrambled to get the folks at the Mamaroneck High School B team together. We have some wonderful students who are working on putting together a video, and we'll be showcasing the students their activities around beekeeping, and we'll be concluding with a feature on pollinator-friendly gardening. And so we really are looking beyond just making it interesting and entertaining to make it very relatable, very personal And we have a membership now with the LMC Media. And so we'll be getting some guidance and probably some airtime as well. So we will be emphasizing, we will be working through the schools to get to parents and engage so many wonderful students in furthering our efforts. And some people may remember that last year during second quarter, we had put together a campaign where we had activities planned and banners set to be created for each of the grade schools to have a Healthy Yards, Healthy Schools campaign. So we'll be, and that brings in the parent teacher associations, another channel for presentation and word of mouth. We've had lots of interest in Q3 to actually invite people for an in-person Healthy Yards garden tour. This was done through Bedford 2030 in Northern Westchester. It had a huge response. Lots of folks showed up, masked, distanced, and it was really a wonderful way to get a lot of hands-on exposure. Our fourth quarter promotion is about going back to the ever important leave the leaf. Don't bring out gas-powered blowers. Don't bring out any blowers. Mulch mow, don't blow. The golden threads through all of this is that we want to show our community and we want to demonstrate to them and give everybody a chance to get involved and understand that having a healthy yard is easy, it's beautiful, and anybody can do it. We want to be inclusive so that anybody, from somebody who has a beautiful large yard with property, as well as people who might be able to put a flower pot near a window, that everybody can be involved with this and practice healthy yards habits. So that's our outlook for 2021.
Terrific. It sounds like you know how to do work plans, June.
Excuse me?
It sounds like you've had some experience doing work plans.
We're just trying to put all of our best ideas together, and it's a great group of people sharing ideas and participating. But we really don't want to limit this just to people who have lots of property. Whether you have a landscape professional, whether you have never watered a seed in your life, we just want to make it so easy, so commonplace. And Karen Core reported a few months ago on this seminar that several of us attended on community-based social marketing. And we want this to spread by social diffusion. We want everybody to see it and relate to it and support it.
So Nancy, I have a question about this, and also with a couple of the other programs. So we do have a substantial number of multifamily buildings in the town. And Healthy Yards, as June was just saying, would be a great program to perhaps be aimed in part at some of our multifamily residents. But inevitably, it might be necessary or useful or helpful to get in touch with the resident managers, the property owners, whatever. Is that something that the town might be able to help with? Any thoughts about that?
We do have a new list of presidents of all the buildings in the Washington Square area, which is, a concentration of multifamily housing in the town. The other area would be Rich Bell Road.
Right.
So, it might be possible to reach out to them and have that as. I think that they actually, I believe that they would like to have an annual or semi-annual connection with the town where we, talk about things of mutual interest. So yeah, I could bring that up.
Oh, that's interesting. So they might be interested in a number of the other projects as well. I can imagine that, for instance, they might be interested, Frank, in resilient emergency backup power and some of the other things. So, all right, Nancy, we should follow up on that together and then see how the collaborative can help the town on that one, on this one. Next up, Lisa, you've been very patient. You're going to talk to us about healthy clubs.
Sure. Hi. So Healthy Clubs is, it's less of an original project and more of a collaboration of existing efforts that have been going on throughout the area. So I'm working with Ellen Martin, and it started with her efforts years ago to reduce food and product waste at the Larchmont Yacht Club. And we kind of got word that there were members at other area clubs who were doing similar things. And so we thought that we would model a program similar to the one, the Green Tigers program at all of the schools, where we have volunteers from each school who work closely with administration, parent volunteers, student volunteers, staff, and various teachers, and work to implement the food scrap recycling program at the schools and waste reduction efforts. So we sort of modeled it off of that. So we identified members at about 8 different area clubs. We started meeting with them. We met with their management, and we pitched this idea of a multi-year program where Mitch helped us identify 8 different areas, 8 different metrics. Some of them are existing programs that are already in the community. So like teaching them about love your food, teaching them about healthy yards. So kind of just getting the word out on things that are already existing in the community and how they could adapt them to their operations. We were making really good progress, actually. And then we did take a break because of the pandemic. The clubs, a lot of them, the operations got very complicated with last year, and we didn't want to add any pressure, but we're looking to start up again in January. And that we think that the focus for this year will be the 2 that I mentioned, Love Your Food and Healthy Yards, because those are really well established and those are very relevant to the club's operations. And then we also want to encourage them to take advantage of New York State is offering financing for 2 areas of electric vehicle installation. So there's help through Con Edison to install electric vehicles, and then there's help through New York State to prepare your site to be electric vehicle ready. And then there's a company, Blink. They are the actual electric vehicle chargers, and they're different models that you can choose, whether they own it fully or the club owns it. So anyway, there are a lot of incentives where where it would be a beneficial time for them to consider electric vehicle charger installations. And then we would over time, see, each of these clubs is at a different stage of sustainability, some further ahead than others. So it's kind of meeting with management and going over like where they are and what we think could be like a reasonable suggestion for the short term and then for the long term.
Great. You and I talked about doing something maybe quarterly of highlighting particular advances or achievements of one of the clubs. Do you want to talk about that a little?
Sure. I mean, do you want me to mention one that just happened? I mean, the yacht club has been on fire lately, and they just assigned somebody to be their sustainability coordinator, which is actually what we're going to recommend at all the other clubs as well, because then you have one staff person who's really managing this. But I think what you're talking about is like the idea of like maybe even honoring them. So, coming up with some sort of an award or a way of recognizing. We just got a sustainability corner in our communications in our monthly newsletter, where there's an article about what the yacht club is doing every month that talks about, like, we've gone green because we got rid of all these envelopes, or now we send so just little things like that. But yeah, no, I think community wide, I think once our group kind of regroups and we can talk about greater publicity for that, would be great. I mean, I'd like to see them have some sort of an award or like a plaque or some sort of recognition on the actual site too.
So Nancy and Sue, how do you think that might be able to work vis-a-vis the town? If the clubs, for instance, give their permission, would it be all right to put this on the collaborative's website, put it on the Facebook page? Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I got to think about that.
Okay.
We don't usually single out private commercial entities. So let me think about that.
Okay.
I think it's so great that they're, I think it is a great endeavor because they are such a ripe audience for sustainability measures, and they really have a responsibility because they are a congregation of people in usually an environmentally sensitive spot. So there's a great opportunity there. I don't know what the relationship with the town would be, though, especially since none of these, well, not none, but the ones you've mentioned are not in the town of Mamaroneck.
Right. One that is, though, and I was talking to one of their members last week. They were quite interested in the idea of doing some sort of a recognition on a quarterly basis. And this is Wingfoot, and something for them that would be falling off a log is just to recognize the food scraps work that they've been doing for the last 10 years. And part of the idea, Nancy, is this notion of community-based social marketing to try to get a little bit of, totally chill, but nonetheless eager competition between the clubs to see how, if somebody is doing a better job of food scraps and somebody's doing a better job of water bottles, what is the third club going to do that's going to make them stand out and get recognized? So yeah, let's try to follow up on that.
I'm sorry, Miss.
Ellen, I think you were here. Any comments, thoughts?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm chiming in late. I had to. I had something I just got home. I've been in touch with the yacht club, as has Lisa, and it's great that Lauren Gray is now overseeing the sustainability portion at the yacht club. And one big step that we've actually been pushing for years is to get the reusable cups in place. So, I mean, the push for me is just getting rid of the single-use plastic. And my dream is for them just to do an all-out ban on single-use plastic at the club. So,
you're here.
Yeah. It's taking so long, but yes, I do see a glimmer, and so they've ordered the reusable cups, and they're actually installing dishwashers, like quick washing dishwashers that will go under the counters in the bars, so that those cups will. It's like because they kind of go hand in hand. You can't have an abundance of cups and not be able to figure out how to wash them on site. So. Salt doesn't seem that interesting, but it's actually makes the process happen. So that's moving along, and also we're hoping that they install water dispensers throughout the campus of the club, so that sailors know that they can't bring plastic bottles to go on the boats, but they have to bring their reusable bottles to refill. And again, that the portion of banning the single-use plastic at LYC has not happened, but we're really close. And there's some precedents. There's some other clubs that have done it, and so I'm really, really hoping that that's something that they can commit to by spring.
Okay, great. Let's keep going. We don't have a specific work plan for the next one, but we have had the Okra Green App team with us on at least one of the last time's collaborative meeting. Michelle, do you want to just quickly summarize where we're headed with this? And maybe Joe Liberti, you can also chime in as to where we're headed with this coming year. Michelle, unmute.
Mute.
That's better.
I'm fine.
Good.
Ryan McIntyre is also here, who's one of the participants in preparing the app. And what I've sent to Sue to send out to the collaborative are these PDF pages that show the way that the app will set up. Ryan and I are working on getting all of the type in a position where we can edit it and add to it, and you'll have questions on it. But for the moment, if you go, Sue will send these out, and you can look at the 5 categories that are in the app, and then each one of those categories breaks down a little bit. Ryan, do you want to explain what they are, or do you want me to go ahead?
Sorry about that. Yeah, you can go ahead. I'll just pull up. I have to pull something up real quick, but I'll chime in as well.
Okay, I don't know if you can share it on this screen. Can you share what the homepage looks like on the app?
Yeah, let me just pull it up real quick.
Okay, so we have water capture. There are 5 headings: water capture, low impact development, low carbon transportation, compost, food and waste, and eliminating single-use plastics. So at the moment, each one of those headings breaks down into further subtitles, and it gives you information as well as how-to and resources of where to acquire the things you need to do to take action. Can you share any of that, Ryan, visually?
Yeah, I'm trying to pull it up right now.
No?
So I think what's fair to say is that the collaborative will be supporting the Okra students on the development and the rollout of the app. We're going to be helping to organize and populate some of or provide the content that the student team will then be embedding into the app. Ryan, want to go from there?
Yeah, sure. So we just have these 5 basic categories here that are easily subject to change. This whole app, Google Glide, is very accessible. None of my group mates have any kind of coding expertise or anything. It's simply just through Google spreadsheets. So you input the information and it shows up easy peasy. But yeah, these 5 categories are very subject to change. You go into one of them, and there's a few within each one. So water capture and reuse, rain barrels, permeable pavements, green roofs and rain gardens. And if you go into one of those, it'll expand on that with a description, why you should implement this in your home or your lifestyle, how to go about taking this action. Because along with consolidating all this information to this app, we want to make it so residents can know what to do once they leave the app, and how to make these positive changes. And to add on top of that, we're adding like links and videos along with that. It's like for the rain barrels, we'll add one like a YouTube video about how to install it, and so on with all the others. So for now, we're still just working on getting all the information we need, and obviously talking to experts like you guys and your opinions on these categories and if we should expand on them, or try and condense it some more. But yeah, overall, that's kind of where we're at right now.
Okay, great. Nancy, I'm not sure that I believe you may have had a chance to see this on another occasion. Is that correct?
No, I haven't.
Oh, well, this is probably not the right venue, but this is an amazing project. It's a great platform. The Okra team and Joe are really to be congratulated If you remember a few years ago, the collaborative, with particularly the efforts of one member, created the Recyclopedia.
Yeah.
This is that kind of effort, but in a way on steroids. And it puts a lot of that information into the palm of everybody's hand. And one of the things that Ryan was just saying, the emphasis here is not necessarily reading this to do a thesis dissertation. It's really using the app to channel someone's idea as quickly as possible to translate that into action and concrete action. And it's just, if we can help the Okra students figure out how to make this work and make it function that way and be successful, it will be fabulous.
Yeah, you guys are very, very inspiring. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
I think it would be helpful if the collab members opened the file, the PDF file, to look at what the categories are and to send back some feedback of whether you want to add other sections or eliminate anything, or if they need to be separated.
Okay, I think this is something Michelle, we'll need to work on. Maybe we'll have a separate call with Joe, Ryan, and the team later this month before the holidays.
Right, but I think the goal is really to get all this information down in the first quarter.
Yes, absolutely.
Right, Ryan?
Yeah, because I mean, we can really work from there on, making it look good and all that stuff that comes with, producing an app. But having the base to start is definitely the most important thing.
Okay, we're going to jump over the post road. So it was probably, we backed way up and we took a running leap on it, but go straight to Frank and community solar.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. So this is, I think there are sort of two parts of this. One is what we're calling phase one, which is the continuation or completion of community solar on the ice rink. And that's at a very exciting phase right now. The solar developer will be putting the panels on the ice rink sometime later this spring or early summer. So I think it'll be very fun for us all to see that happen. And Mark Manley and I have both been working on this, or working with the solar developer. So we're gonna have to get those dates nailed down. But I think we're a couple things with regard to that. One is we still have to, part of this community solar, the idea was to offer this first to low-income residents of our community. And so that's been programmed in, but we have to be very hands-on with the developer to make sure that actually happens. And then the other part that has to happen, or I think it's important to happen, is engaging students at the hummocks. And there's a teacher who I think Mark has been in communication with, who is very interested in having a class follow this. So I think, maybe even if we could get more than a class, and we actually, the developer sent to us a PowerPoint presentation that they provided to other schools, and we provided some feedback on that. Our initial thought was it was a little bit complicated for the middle school, but there's also the possibility that, if there are high school students who are particularly interested in this, there might be an opportunity to have a different presentation that's at a sort of slightly different audience. So anyhow, I think it's just an incredible educational opportunity, not just for students, but also people in the community to see, to be able to see solar panels being put on. And so I think it's going to be very fun. And then the second phase is that it seems like there's a very obvious opportunity for the school district to put solar on the adjacent Hummocks middle school building. But I don't think we want to presume that it makes sense for the school district. But what we do want to do is we've asked the solar developer to prepare a sort of an initial proposal that would show what they think the amount of solar that could go onto the school. And then what we would do is we would share the economics of what we've learned. And then our hope would be that that if we could at least provide it in a manner so that the district could decide whether this is something that they want to do or not, so that they have all the facts, I think that would be our goal. Again, there's lots of what I've learned is that there are lots of complexities with the school district that aren't immediately apparent as to why they can or can't do things. So, want to go, be sort of cautiously optimistic that this might work, but it does seem like it could be an obvious opportunity. And the opportunity basically is that they would do what the town is doing, which is they would rent their roof to a solar developer. A lot of the economics of solar projects come from tax incentives, and because neither the town nor the school pays taxes, they can't take advantage of that. So that's why this community solar format, which is leasing the roof, makes so much sense. And then then there's the other benefit of being able to provide residents of the town with a share of this, the savings on their utility bills that come from community solar. But so that's what we're hoping that we can explain that in a way that will be understandable and will make sense to the school district. So that's what phase 2 is all about. So cross your fingers that works.
Great. Mark Manley, can you chime in?
Where are you?
And I think Mark had something else he had to jump off to, so he may not be available. But
There he is.
There he is.
Yes.
Hi, sorry. Yeah, I've been listening all along, but I think one of the teachers at Homix was Grant Edick. I think he chairs the solar or the Green Tigers Club at the school. There was another, I think some of the science teachers there obviously would be quite interested. We were working on a presentation with Sunlight General on what to present to them. So I don't know, that's about all I can add, I think, at this time. But I have reached out to Sylvia Wallach at the assistant superintendent of business for the district, and trying to see if she's interested in maybe doing some solar on the Homix itself as well. So as an added community solar type program.
Well, it's interesting. You two are kind of developing a 1-2 punch here, in the sense that the left jab is really, hey, Green Tigers, all 4 elementary schools, Homix, the high school as well. We're doing, this neat thing is going to happen in the spring, and everybody figure out how to follow it, whether there's a webcam or there's promotional literature, there are daily photographs, whatever it is that it is. And you got to believe that Sunlight will want to PR this as much as they can. And then you kind of follow up with your second punch, which is, wouldn't this be great if we could build on this and do it the place where the high school students, thank God they left and got to be cool people in high school, or the elementary school kids are, looking forward to graduating so that they can be at Homix. And so it's really in the center of the school years program. And it's, it's really the two of those together maybe is more than each of them separately. What do you guys think?
The two, you mean the...
Yeah, blend the fact that you want to get the students involved in the installation to to follow straight up with, and there's another opportunity right next door, and maybe get a groundswell of some support from the Green Tigers, from their parents, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, well, I guess, my 2 cents on this, from having done the, the energy dashboard in the school, was that there's, at least for that particular project, there was a real separation between the teachings and the academic aspect and the facilities aspect. And so I think that while they're theoretically could be a, benefit to combining the two. I think they're two separate things. And so it's, I guess the answer, yes, it is a good idea, Mitch, but I think I think that's kind of why we're approaching it, with two distinct separate things, because I think that's what I've learned in the school district is that there are these, the administration, facilities people are very different and distinct from the academic people.
So, well, some of those people, to be fair, some of those people have changed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Over
And
that
just
time. And, but I have a separate question. Is it
yes.
possible,
Can I
even though
say something?
the schools do not pay taxes for the solar generation to provide the electricity for the school? Each year the budget for the utilities in the school goes up about 20%. So if there's a way to offset the utilities in the schools, either by their participation or by participation by another, going back a few years, we were talking about making the schools net zero, right? And that was like just way too big for then. But certainly with the success of the solar program, right? Maybe just the electricity could be covered.
So Michelle, historically, and it always makes sense to redo the numbers because the world keeps changing, but historically, the reason why the town didn't do it, and this would be the same thing for the school district, is that they pay such a low energy cost or electricity cost because they get it from NYPA. And so when you run the numbers, it just doesn't make sense. There was actually a big program, as you may remember, sponsored by NYSERDA called K-Solar. They tried to get schools to put solar on the roof. And I think the primary reason why it didn't work for Mamaroneck, and I'm trying to remember, somebody else may remember, but I think it partly was economics, partly it was, a lot of the roofs don't really lend themselves in terms of, what's on the roofs or with the, the orientation or the pitch of the roof. But I know that we pushed the K-Solar people to the school district and it didn't work. So, but it's, I think it does merit relooking because it certainly would be fun. A lot of the California schools are,
a lot of schools cross country.
Yeah, are going to net zero, and it would be a fun thing to be able to do.
Many.
But at the risk of getting Mark Manley mad at me, Mark is very, very, very smart about a whole bunch of things, but in particular batteries. So we have sort of cautiously put our toe in the water on that. But I think, in my mind, it's if we can get the school district to to present something that makes sense and that they're busy, and so we have to make something that economically makes sense. If we can do that, then I'm confident we can come up with a solution that will be the economically the best, whether that's them buying the power directly as a route to net zero, or whether it's doing.
I remember this situation of NYPA providing the power so cheaply, but why is that? Are they subsidized by the state to provide cheaper? Yes, you must know, why is NYPA so cheap?
Well, the idea is that they NYPA get power from, I think their primary source of the power is from the hydroelectric. And so it's a cheap source of power. And then from a public policy perspective, I think that the idea was that they wanted to be able to this was a good way to subsidize public institutions. And NYPA power also is used as an economic development tool. So you'll see some larger businesses that are deemed to be economic development drivers. They also get NYPA power. But I think there have been many people who've argued that it acts sort of in a perverse way because it discourages these public institutions from doing more energy efficiency work or putting on renewables because they get this So it's, but for the time being, that's the way it works.
I have no problem with developing batteries. That's for sure. You know, I think that,
Just have to get somebody to pay for it.
Or tougher economic.
Yeah, Karen, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, just a word of encouragement to, Frank and Mark and team that, don't forget now that the school district has adopted a sustainability mission as of like January. So that's, where they're saying they're going to try to, they're pursuing sustainability in their practices as well as in the curriculum. So it's not just, in the educational, in the classrooms, but they are really trying to show that they are a role model as well, putting into place practices. And that's why, the food scrap recycling has been introduced, right, in the past few years. And I want to also just let you know that Steve Brugge is a relatively new director of facilities. And, I don't think he was the person that you were working with at that time. He's very much, very, very different from his predecessor, and very open. And, Green Tigers parents have met with him several times. He's
Could
very,
you make an introduction to us, for us?
yes.
so
Yes.
his facilities.
Yes, director of facilities.
Yeah.
I mean, I've met him and I've met the predecessor. They're very different.
Yeah.
You'll be in a very, I think you'd be very encouraged that he's
Yeah, that's great news.
very open to meeting and, engaging in discussion and conversation and he's just very approachable.
Hey,
Yeah,
Mark,
he's been involved in the Homix solar, the Homix ice rink solar, because we're using the the school's transformer, it's Con Ed's transformer to interconnect.
Oh, that's right.
So he was the guy that kind of just chimed in from the school's perspective of, what we would do there. So yeah, he's been very helpful.
It was also very helpful with the food scrap recycling at the elementary schools and also at Hummox in coordination with Karen. So we pushed forward while schools were open and really did a lot in a relatively short time from September till January.
Great. Nancy, you were going to say something, and then I think
Yes,
we should probably move on.
I just wanted to let Frank and Mark know that Sustainable Westchester has some new community solar programs that are available to municipalities and to residents in municipalities. And they're really easy and we really should participate in them. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. And I unfortunately have been mired in town budget, so I haven't been able to take advantage of it, but we really should.
Okay.
Yeah, so this might be a third aspect of what you guys are thinking about, but some really good connections there. Moving on.
Eliza had something to mention.
Oh,
sorry.
yes, Eliza, go ahead.
Oh, I just want to say quickly, like, I have solar panels, and I'm a big, I'm so excited that you guys are doing this work. And there are some people who are scared of solar panels because I think they're sitting on their roof and it's radiation. And if you're thinking about schools, that it's important that when you, whatever work you're doing, that you lead with a little bit of how safe it is, because it really is proven to be so safe. And when you're dealing with parents and children in schools, you're going to get pushback around that stuff. And it's really the safest form of energy right now. And I think it's important that people get that information, not just that it's another alternative, but that it really is the best, and so I think with schools, it's a sensitive area, and just to kind of put that in the back of your head,
Okay.
That was my thought.
Has that been an issue that's been expressed in other communities? Because I've never heard of such a thing.
I mean, I hear it all the time from people, like, is it safe? It's sitting right there. Is it radiation? And then, people look and they find out, oh, it is okay. But, it's a question. And so if you're an educator around this stuff or you're engaging, it's to keep that in mind, that people don't immediately trust it. People are untrusting of things they don't know.
Okay, good. Okay, Karen, we could talk for an hour about food scraps, but I'll give you 3 minutes.
Okay, thanks. So on food scrap recycling, and notice that, I just also want to highlight, make sure that Nancy's okay with this too, that we're trying to shift from food waste recycling to food scrap recycling, because starting in January, we're, from what I understand, we're going to be participating, our municipalities, joint municipalities will be participating in the county's new residential food scrap transportation and disposal program, along with a lot of other municipalities. So I hope that we can, if Nancy's okay with that, for us to start, shifting the language to saying food scrap recycling versus food waste recycling as well. We'll be making that transition.
I'd say, I guess we have to call it whatever they call it.
Okay. So we're going to be making that transition, and just to highlight that, in our plan for next year, basically, I mean, the main thing is that we are trying to make food scrap recycling really a part of our culture and way of life. And we all know that this is so important for sustainability generally, because this is a kind of daily habit that sort of helps us to form this identity that we are people who care, because we are taking daily actions in sorting and separating our food scraps, and it helps all of us, right? It helps us to build this culture of sustainability that we are doing this, and it just opens the way for us to think about other parts of our life where we can be engaging in sustainable behavior. So I think this is an important sort of gateway behavior that we want to entrench in our community, right? And so that's why you'll see that our plans are really around trying to increase participation around food scrap recycling, social diffusion. We've got the sticker project led by Nicole Gassman and Laura Wortkin, to stickers that show Village of Larchmont, Town of Mamaroneck, we recycle food scraps, that we want to encourage existing food scrap recycling households to put on their garbage bins facing their neighbors when they put out the garbage cans, so that it encourages this diffusion of this practice, as we've learned from our community-based social marketing workshop. So we're trying to do that, and because we know the importance of neighbors and the importance of the influence that neighbors have on each other, right? We are working on, we have this home delivery service of food scrap kits to residents that we've been promoting through social media next door, and which we started in May, that we're going to be continuing because of COVID. That has been working quite well. That's been, we've delivered about 40 food scrap kits since the beginning of May. So we've been able to continue this, getting people started on food scrap recycling in spite of COVID. So we need to find other creative ways. And so I'm looking forward to the Green app actually as another way to help raise awareness and get the word out. So really looking forward to that. And then of course, we have one big thing recently has been this, we're trying to support measures for curbside pickup. It's just part of making this part of the culture. We're trying to reduce the barriers to participating. One of the barriers is the transporting of our food scraps and disposal at Maxwell Avenue Recycling Center. So we're trying to support our municipalities in going to curbside. So, and that has been a big discussion in the whole proposed curbside only collection, as we've seen. I think there's still going to be, our boards haven't voted yet on this whole curbside only collection, but from what I understand, they're trying to do that. And Nancy, of course, can shed more light on this, but from what I understand, they're going to try to resolve this before the end of this year, hopefully. So we will try to support that. And of course, the recent thing that we've learned about is the Okra team with their carbon-free compost pickup initiative, which will be a demonstration project on how students can be part of the solution in engaging our community in food scrap recycling. So we Lisa McDonald, I apologize that Lisa McDonald wasn't on this work plan. She's our key lead mentor, working with Joe Liberty and the students on this, with Mark and I supporting her in providing guidance and mentoring our students in this team in getting this project off the ground, which they're aiming to do in spring next year. They're hoping to start this pilot compost pickup, carbon-free compost pickup within the village of Larchmont only. So, okay. And of course, we're trying to, and we want to make sure that the compost give back takes place again next year. That, you know, for the 4th year, it will be the 4th year, I think the 4th year next year. But it's been a very popular community event, this annual compost give back, which really ties in with this emergence of victory gardens as well, of, you know, growing foods, and so people who participate in food scrap recycling see the benefits of, you know, what happens at the end with the food scraps, how it's turned into this black gold, right, to grow more food. So that has been a really big, exciting event, and that we were able to continue thanks to our municipalities, thanks to Nancy and Steve. We had that in June, and so we'd like to plan for that again next year. So I think
Okay,
those are the
good.
main things. Anybody else, you know, like Mark or Arlene, anybody else want to chime in, please do so.
Karen, does I know you know this, but does Lisa and other people who are involved in the clubs, do they know about the food scrap requirement for what they're called large users, that if you're a large user, you're going to be required to separate your food scraps? So the clubs, I think all the clubs may fall into that category. So that seems to me that could be an area that, you know, if people are talking to the clubs, they could make them aware of it. And, you know, maybe there's something that we as the collaborative could provide some background. And, you know, I know, Karen, you could connect people to the people at whatever that in New York State, Double P.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, Frank is referring to the new law that's going to take place next year, right? This coming year, for large generators of food scraps are required to divert food scraps from the waste. And I have to we have to find out whether those clubs generate enough that they qualify, you know, they're considered large generators. I'm not exactly sure, but that's a good question that we should really, and even if they're not, but, you know, the idea is that this is just the start, right? This law is really the start of trying to encourage big generators and medium, and, you know, down the whole spectrum, just any generators of food scraps to start getting to the practice of diverting food scraps. So definitely this is an opportunity good. I mean, I'm glad you brought that up, Frank. And
so Karen, if you could look into that right away, and figure out what large actually means, because if some of the clubs serve on the weekends, you know, 500 to 1,000 meals in the summertime, and probably more than 1,000 meals on a nice, you know, summer weekend. So if that's not a large generator of potential food scraps, it's hard to know what wouldn't be or what would be. But this is something, Lisa, where we could piggyback on the Wingfoot experience. Yep. And, you know, make them heroes by saying, hey, this is coming, but oh, by the way, here's a club in town that's really been doing this for 10 years, and this is how they do it. And I think we could probably get Wingfoot interested in offering their, at least their experience and support.
Sure.
Okay, good. All right, I think the last topic for this evening is wireless communications. And Eliza, you and Ellen, wherever Ellen is, have been very patient in hanging in here. So please go ahead.
Well, I think patient is the theme word here. Um, and I've done a lot of work with that particular term. So, 2020 was about putting together the ordinance, and I worked with Adam Stollerow, Steve Paget, and Rizel, and we put together an amended wireless ordinance based on the RIE code, which was advised from the LEC. They felt like work with what other communities had. And so we did that, and we've submitted it to the town board, and George Latimer has a copy of it, and lots of people have copies of it. And the hope is just that people, either write their own with their own attorneys, or that involve us to just put a protective code together, not to block technology, but to keep people safe, to keep young people safe, to be thoughtful, to be ahead of the curve, not to have to fix what's broken, but to prevent things from becoming broken. And that's the number one goal for really 2021, is to continue to educate and for people to see that this is just about being thoughtful. Just because you can't see it, just because you can't feel it, doesn't mean it's safe. And, there's a lot more research that has to be done. There's very little on 5G. There's a lot on 4G, but the telecom doesn't have much because they don't really want, that's how they survive. New Hampshire's done a ton of great work, and they have basically put together a whole recommendation for their whole state, and lots of places are doing stuff that is, moving ahead of the curve. And our community, that's what we hope for them. That's what we hope for us, that we're safe and that we have some, clearly defined setbacks and areas that are off limits that keep elderly and the sick and children safe. And, that it's in the proper areas, and that it continues to have the frequencies are more monitored. That's the number one suggestions that are coming out, is that the levels of radiomagnetic frequency is more continually monitored. And with the smaller cells, the 5G cells, they don't monitor them, and they're much higher. And all of the 5G and 4G stuff blends back into net zero and tree life, because it affects trees, it affects insects, it affects the amount of electricity we use also, which goes back into, it really, they call it the vampire, because it sucks up so much electricity. And then we're back to the carbon situation once again, when we've done all this other work, let alone the health stuff, which I'm sort of always held back from talking about, but it's pretty major. The tumors and young children and fertility and autism, and there's a lot. So more research needs to be done before we just let it go and say, sure. We really have to stay on top of people around putting together thoughtful, careful code. And that's what I'm going to just keep fighting for, and keep being here and annoying people. And that's sort of my goal, for the next year, with Ellen, who's amazing and helps and does so much. So that's that.
So you bring up a really good point, Eliza, and maybe this is something we can talk about on a separate phone call with Ellen. Maybe there's a way of taking the core message that you helped develop this year, you and Ellen, and then, focusing it to some of the specific other programs we have, like Love Your Food. What does 5G mean to love your food? What does 5G mean to healthy yards? What does it mean to healthy clubs? And it's a way of just, sort of building bridges to some of the other aspects of what the collaborative is doing and our communities trying to
achieve. Yes, agreed.
Okay.
Thank
and
you.
Maybe this is also something in terms of once a quarter or however often it can be, finding something new to say and figuring out, working with Sue to get that out on our platforms.
Yeah, and there's always there's new research being done all the time, whether it's pilots or firefighters, or what it does to trees and and fires in California, or there's always new information coming out every day about concerns.
I have a
Well, you also didn't mention property values too. I mean, nobody's going to live next to one of these monopines.
Yes.
Does the code basically suggest that we should be negative on 5G or that we should do further research?
It suggests that we have setbacks and that there be regulation and there be insurance. It does not say no.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Let's see, anybody else on this one?
Not on this one, but is
Yes,
Nancy,
George.
is Nancy still here?
No, she had to run off.
Because I wanted to talk to her here about blowers. We had taken a position that we wanted to further restrict blowers, and we'd taken a position that we wanted to work with the two villages together, if that was at all possible. That effort to work with the two villages to have a coordinated law failed. But we were still left with the thought that I think that we ought to further restrict gas blowers, but we seem to be, I think we're banging our heads against the wall when it comes to interest in the town. And I wanted to get some feedback from her about that.
Yeah, we will have to do that at another time. She probably agrees with you, but Sue, I know you're not allowed to talk for Nancy, but what do you think? Sue Odiana, what do you think anyway? You're muted, Sue.
Can you hear me?
Yes, good.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm using the phone for part and the computer for part. It's a mess here. Again, I can't speak for Nancy. The only thing I can recall when this came up last time is that, you're talking about 3 separate boards. So you can't really make one law, as far as I know, for 3 different municipalities. You can try and copy it, I suppose, and vote on it. But, how are you going to get all 3 municipalities to create the same law? Or, I'm not sure what the goal is. Is the goal just to copy what Larchmont did? Or maybe that's, a different.
Right. I think that what George was asking was a little bit more fundamental. I think we've recognized that the ship has sailed potentially on the uniform law, given what the village of Larchmont has passed. But George was interested to know what the sense of the board was at this point about the prospect of trying to move forward on some further restrictions of various aspects of gas blower or blower operations. Right.
Again, I cannot speak for the board. I think that it's probably, the last thing I remember at a meeting where we discussed this was Jeff relaying that many people felt that the electric blowers weren't sufficient. And so to require to do something like what Larchmont had passed sounded like it was going to be difficult. That's what I remember him saying at our meeting in the summer when we talked about this at the collaborative meeting.
Right.
Can I suggest another possibility could be, as Larchmont moves into its implementation phase, we're going to have more information and more feedback that we could share. And maybe in the next 2 years, as we move through our transition period and implementation of the ban in June 2022, we'll have more to say that might be more compelling for the other communities and their boards. It's still early on these bans.
Right. I think another thing to think about, George, is that, as you'll recall, one of our other collaborative members, Steve Moser, got beset on both sides and in the back sometime this fall with blowers, and he identified the same thing that we were talking about in the context of the generators that Frank was saying in terms of the noise code, that maybe there are some opportunities not to attack the gas blowers as for their fuel source, but to attack their noise output, to attack the density of blowers. I think one of our other, I think the village of Larchmont at one point had a restriction on the number of blowers for the size of the yard, that sort of thing. And maybe it's more, we can take a quality of life and peace of mind and ability of children to study kind of take on this and maybe make some progress there.
Well, in a sense, we've been working on that for a while, but it seems to me right now that the board just isn't interested in that. And I wonder if we're wasting our time if we continue down that road. Or should we continue down that road of trying to get more information, more ideas, and deal with the town board?
I think what Kristen says is right? When Larchmont's law goes into effect and they see the effect it then has on residents, and if people are supportive of it, we're going to have a bigger, I mean, this is just my opinion. I have no idea what the board thinks about it, but obviously the board is going to be responsive to residents' reactions and responses. So it will be interesting to see. I know that's a ways away, but it will be interesting to see what happens.
It's really
In
2
Larchmont.
years, which is, if you can hold on another 2 years, I think you'll.
Right.
Well, I think,
and hopefully will be a model that will be compelling.
well, I would agree with you, Kristen. I think history is on our side, and there will come a time when gas blowers are banned. But I think maybe we ought to just slow down right now in our efforts and perhaps come back in a while.
Maybe this is something, George, that we could also do some crossover with the Healthy Yards folks on. Probably a lot of the Healthy Yards folks don't use blowers anyway, and maybe there's a way of, as part of the work that June and Arlene and that team are going to be doing, that they can help emphasize the adverse effects of blowers, both in terms of noise and pollution, and just, recruit some more people who will side with us when we go back to see our politicians.
I love it.
We're already doing that, of course. We just posted on our webpage an article about alternatives to, the whole leave the leaves thing. And there's a reason we're doing that. We understand that this is building to a bigger issue. And instead of attacking leaf blowers, we're providing the solution to it.
All right, so George, I think that could be something you could help with on the Healthy Yards team at the moment. It's a perfect corollary. What do you think?
I love it.
Okay.
I think the mulching, we could do something with mulching.
Good. All right. So I think that's pretty much everything. I'd like to thank everyone for actually sticking through all of this. It's quite a lot to go through. So again, I think the notion is that I will try to be back in touch with each of the teams in the next couple of weeks before the holidays really get started, to feedback, chat about it. How do we want to adjust the work plans? And then right after New Year's, the goal will be to get these back out to everyone. And then at our meeting on January the 12th, the notion will be maybe won't have quite as much discussion, but maybe we'll be focusing on trying to get last input and then try to approve these one by one. Any thoughts about all of that?
Yeah, Mitch, before you go on, I didn't hear you cover the Boston Post Road at all.
So I didn't cover it. Nancy and I had a conversation recently.
Oh, okay.
And for it being a public road, let's just say there's a high degree of possessiveness among certain people, in our community who we all know. And she asked us to, she actually didn't ask us. I volunteered or suggested, but I'm happy to be told that I'm wrong, that we maybe downplay this one for the moment.
Okay, that's fine. I just, it's on your list. The other thing, Mitch, that I'd like to bring up is, okay, we just spent this entire meeting going over this and the time, and you're going to spend another meeting doing it. Can we do some of this review or commentary either through a Google Doc file or sometimes, because really you've involved a lot of people have left this meeting. And I think we can use the time better to also have the introductions. Maybe what I wrote down was to put together a bio so that everyone can say, okay, Mark Kramer, Town of Mamaroneck, Healthy Yards, interested in this. I understand why we do it, but if we're going to do the same thing next time, I'm not excited.
Okay.
I agree.
So thanks for that, Mark. Good points both. Maybe what we can do is the review of the collaborative will be, maybe we can do some sort of an online thing. Sue and I will kind of work that out so that people can, maybe the final plans will be available for the week preceding our meeting on the 12th. And then everybody's required to get their comments in by a certain time. And then on the 12th, the part of the meeting that we devote to this will not be nearly as long. So I'm happy to have anybody's thoughts about how to make that part of it go a little faster. But one of the things I know that we want to make sure we do in each of the work plans is really emphasize some of those quarterly milestones and things we're going to do, because that's going to be very important to demonstrate to the board that we're out there and we're not setting the town on fire deliberately.
Okay, I'd like to raise another issue, Mitch,
Sure.
and I think Sue sort of brought it up in some email, and it was brought up here tonight by a high school student from the Honor Society. And that's how we involve volunteers from the high school and what logistics. Okra is one thing that's been set up through Joe and Michelle, but now I hear another request, and I'm just wondering what the lines of communication are. And also, I'm suggesting, if it is open, that each committee think about how they would use a volunteer. And I will very willing put together, if you send me, this is your committee and I like a volunteer to do this, accumulate that information and then send it somewhere, whether it goes to Mitch, Sue, Nancy, Steve, or whatever. But the idea is, we've gotten a request from students. They say they want to be involved. If we don't get back to them, we've let them down, and that's no good.
Fair enough.
So, Mitch, maybe you can discuss this with Sue and Nancy, and then get back to each of us in one big broadcast email as to how they'd like to coordinate that, and maybe it goes through a teacher or whatever for the Honor Society. I'm not sure.
Right, I do, yeah, I agree with you, Mark. They could be a wonderful resource that would help each of us and all of us. This could be something we can add to the work plan, so we kind of, everybody can plug in a line of, student volunteer participation, however we want to phrase it, and people can be thinking about it that way. We do need a referee and someplace that's a clearinghouse. And although I hate to add to Sue's burden, Sue and I will talk about this offline. I think if we kind of go willy-nilly, it might not be the best thing. And we may not be so concerned about what's happening at the schools in terms of paying attention to what their students are doing. But I think from the town's point of view, we have to be a little bit careful.
I understand 100%.
Okay, Michelle?
I'm sorry, Mitch.
I think we can handle that within the actual committees. I think based on the seminar that we sat in about the social marketing, there's such a huge role for students to help participate in this. You can't hear me, or you can?
I can hear you.
And I think that, I'm not sure that it has to be huge monitoring burden, but it would be great to have them.
Sharon?
Yeah, Mitch, also, I forget when you said you were going to meet with the town board to present, but I was wondering whether at our next meeting, we will be talking about some kind of prioritization of, what are the things you're going to present to the town board so that it's not overwhelming, because, there's a lot of work plans also, right? And I suppose we want to try to be strategic in presenting things that a sort of coherent picture for them about what we are about, right? And not overload them too much. How are we going to do that? And at the same time, build this trust and relationship with them. So I'm sort of interested in finding out how we can move towards that also.
Okay, good. I think that's something we will have to talk about. Agreed.
And then Mitch, also, if you do speak with the board to get some of their initial feedback, what are they interested in?
Right.
Nancy made that statement that they have interest. Well, if they have interest, maybe they'd like to tell us in December rather than in June.
Right. I think we're going to give them the opportunity in January.
I'm being sarcastic.
I know. Okay, good, everyone. Kevin, we didn't hear from you this evening.
You don't have to hear from me. I joined I'm going to work with Arlene and the others on the tree committee.
Okay, that's great.
I don't really have any. If I have something to say, you'll hear from me. But I'm on mute.
Okay.
But thank you.
And Libby?
Same committees. I agree with everything they said. I love working with them all.
All right, terrific. All right.
One thing, Mitch,
yes.
about the gas-powered leaf blowers, I think great synergy for the healthy yards. It's also showing them that it's not as difficult and helping the landscapers to change their way of doing things and resist it less, seeing that it works really well and they can still make money.
Yep.
I know.
All right, listen, if I probably won't see very many of you, but maybe I'll be able to talk to you. But listen, thank you so much for participating this year.
Yeah.
We'll have our annual holiday party next year. And I look forward to working with everybody in 2021.
Thank you for being such a great leader of this whole thing. Really, it's amazing, your energy and it's just very impressive. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah,
well,
thank
thanks
you,
very
Mitch.
much, everyone.
Thank you, Ned.
You
Okay,
clearly
good
don't
night.
sleep, but whatever you take.
Yeah.
Tell us what it is.
Okay.
Thanks, Mitch.